Good morning, everyone. My name is Mamon Wilson, and I'll just briefly give you an introduction so that we can be more familiar with each other. First of all, I'm not qualified to do what I'm going to attempt to do. And I want to make sure I make that very clear because people think that I have a lot of intelligence. I don't. I don't have it. I'm more qualified to do the things of the world than I am of Christ. And it's something that I really don't want to do. I'm being honest with you. I don't feel the accolades or the praises. I don't feel that. I feel like I would rather just disappear. And that's the way I am. I go into the supermarket and people said, and my son know this, he said, "That's Mamon Wilson." And I said, "How do folks know that?" I go to an island I'd never been before, and they said, and I step in the church, and all of a sudden the church acknowledged me, and I don't know nobody in that church. And I said, "Lord, I didn't ask for this." I'd rather be somewhere by myself. I was gifted as an artist. I'm a fine and portrait artist and sculpture. I'm more comfortable doing that. I'd rather paint your portrait or carve you out a piece of wood or marble or something like that. Because then I can be off into myself, and I don't have to worry about nobody else. I don't have to worry about speaking plain, good English. I don't have to worry about that. But God called me to do this work, and I know He did because He qualified me to do it. And I've tried many times to get away from it. If you understood the magnitude of what God has blessed us to do, you would understand. We run probably, I hate to say only, but I know no other ER medical missionary facility in the world. I do not run a lifestyle center. I do not. The lifestyle, the 8 doctors, is the foundation. They are the 10th commandments of health. And we must have that. I do not even train lifestyle people. You should already know that when you come to my school. If you don't know that, then I have to modify. But I'd rather you already know the fundamentals of medical missionary work and natural health. Because I'd like to get into a more advanced approach in dealing with disease. To really understand disease, you have to understand the language of disease. Disease have a language of its own. Just like some of you speak French, English, German. It's a language. You have to learn that language. Same thing with disease. If you do not know the language, you won't be able to communicate. You won't understand. You will find yourself fighting against a very curative process. Disease is a curative process, not a disease process. This is the fundamental principles of what I believe. I do not fight against the curative process, which you call disease. I aid and abet it, but I do not hinder that process. So when a person has cancer, large open cancer festering in their body, I say praise God. When I have a big tumor budging out of their chest, then I find joy in that because I know the body is producing a curative reaction. Most people try to prevent that. Most people that have a cancerous sore, they try to heal it up, but I don't. Why would I want to heal up the very process of the body trying to expel what's in the system? It makes no fundamental understanding to me. Oh, I have approached it the wrong way, but it didn't work for me. And I learned instead of fighting the process of nature, seeking a curative reaction, learn to work with that process. Let nature be in control of the process. And then that way I won't hinder the curative process. Do y'all understand that? So anytime I'm working with someone if a person have diarrhea, then what is diarrhea? What kind of language is diarrhea communicating to me? Well, then I have to be able to understand the language. I have to stop a moment and say, what's really happening? What are you trying to say to me? I'm saying that there's some impurities in the eliminary canal, and I'm about to expel it. I'm going to stimulate the intestinal villi to produce an excessive amount of fluid that would dump into my colon and give me a self-enema, which I call diarrhea. And I said, well, what is that telling me? That's telling me that nature, my body, is trying to expel something that is causing an irritation in the system. Then, after I understand that, then what is my job? Is to assist nature. My job is to hinder the diarrhea or to what? Aid and assist the diarrhea. Well, the average person will say, well, I'm tired of going to the bathroom, I'm all sore and raw and I'm sick of that. I want to stop it. That's the wrong process. You see, because if you stop the process, you leave the impurities in the system. But if you can aid the removal of the impurities, you will soon stop the diarrhea. Because once nature have achieved this process, it will stop it on its own. So now, since this is a class and we are here to share and to learn, how would you stop that process without hindering the process? You got diarrhea, how would you stop it? Any ideas?
I would add whatever the body already needs to produce diarrhea.
Okay, and what is the body producing is a liquid solution through the eliminary canal. So what you would add is keep them good and hydrated.
Yeah.
Right, you would do that. That's absolutely right. You want to make sure you keep them good and hydrated so that nature can do its process of trying to eliminate the impurities. And the elimination is what we want to look at, because we got to get whatever it is that is causing this irritation out. So how do we get it out? By simply giving the body an enema, alkaline. Wouldn't that make sense? Since the body's trying to give itself an enema, why don't we give the body an enema? That don't make practical sense to us, do it? Because you're going, you want to stop, but now you give yourself an enema so you can go some more, but you actually helping the system get rid of that impurities in the system. Now, none of that makes sense, then challenge me. Ask questions now. I can sit up here and I can talk for hours and hours, and it's like water bouncing off a duck bag. But if you ask questions, you will assimilate what I'm trying to share, and it will stay with you. So we give an enema to stop the diarrhea, because once you eliminate the lower colon, the body will naturally slow down the peristaltics, and by removing the impurities, and it stops. That's just a crude illustration. Another one is a fever. All of us know a fever is a friend and not a foe, right? So if a person have a high temperature, how do you stop? How do you aid or help a person with a very high fever going almost into convulsion? How do you help a person like that? Do you stop the fever? No, because it's a friend, right? So, but what is the most natural thing you do? You stop it. Did you help the system by doing that? No, you didn't. And so the fever will return later, because all you've done is rechannel those impurities and toxins somewhere else that will resurface somewhere else later. So now, what do we learn from that? Once again, the language is speaking. The language is speaking. It's saying, I'm about to elevate a fever so that I can produce what we call phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is nothing but an acceleration of white cells, rapid development of white blood cells, which can come in, destroy the infection, eliminate whatever is causing the problem. So the body's giving itself a fever treatment to produce an immune response. And how did the body do that? By what? Creating a fever. Are you with me? What should we do? How are you going to aid the body? How are you going to help the body?
Hydro.
What type of hydro? Okay, so now, what type of hydro is the body giving?
Hot.
Hot. So now you got to say, okay, now, This person got a high fever. They're almost into convulsions. Do I do a very hot bath, a temperate bath, or a cool bath? Now, this is where you got to use some kind of, reasoning power. Yes.
Temperate if it is high fever.
Yes, that's right. Now, if it's not, if it's low-grade fever, we can use a very hot bath. Are you following me?
Because then it's too much if it's hot, right?
Right, because if you get too hot, you're going to accelerate them into convulsions. That's a cleansing reaction. You don't want to produce the cleansing reaction, but a temperate means you just gradually trying to help the body produce a fever without going too far with it. That's understanding language.
You use cold.
I wouldn't just use cold. Cold will actually stop it. It will stop the process and drive the infection deep into the body.
Can I ask you something? When our children were small, I used cold wet cloth, magnesia, injections. And I did it 2 times a day, and it was very high. After 1 hour, the temperature was 1 degree lower, but the bad stuff came out afterwards.
Yeah.
Was it okay?
That's okay. It works. It's good. I mean, so now, anytime you run a high fever, your body, your muscles go through, it can have a tremendous effect. So you sweat and you dehydrate, and you lose your sodium and potassium level real easy. So you have to replenish that. If you don't, then your muscles can go into contraction. Like when you do a Charlie horse. Some of you may have been running and get a Charlie horse. That is that just sodium or potassium level is too low. Your muscles go into contraction. Well, it's not just calf muscles, it's your muscles in your chest, your heart.
That's the pain you get here.
Right.
When you say run.
Yep. In your calf or anywhere in the body. So let's say that if it affects your muscular system with not enough potassium, not enough sodium, what about your heart? Your heart is a muscle. So that means you get a fever, you're going to have what? Rapid palpitation. You got to calm that down by making sure that your sodium potassium level is in balance. So what we do is we simply get them a temperate bath and vinegar by sponging them down with vinegar. All right? Yeah. All right? But the vinegar is very high in potassium. And so by simply sponging the muscles down, it's absorbed because it's a solvent. Vinegar is a solvent. That means it can penetrate through the mucous membrane of the stomach, and it can calm down the rapid palpitation of the heart. Just understanding the language. Okay? And that's really it. What if you get something stuck in your eye? What do you blink? You keep blinking, right? And as more you blink, what happens? You produce some fluid from the eyes, right? Right. So what is your body trying to do? Trying to expel it out by what? Once again, doing the same thing you do with diarrhea. It's bringing fluid to that area. The rapid blinking is nothing but like peristaltics that is stimulating the tear ducts to produce more fluid to try to flush it out. Then you say, well, look, how do I help get this thing out of my eye? You simply aid the body by what? Holding the head back, stretching the eye, put some lemon juice in it, honey in it. I'll take one flaxseed and stick one flaxseed in the eye. And then you're doing this and you're doing that and you're doing that. And guess what? The flaxseed will help pull out whatever's stuck in the eye. The lemon juice will sting for about 30 seconds, stimulate the tear ducts, produce lysine. That would disinfect the eye and clean the eye out. Okay? It's just learning the language. And I really will not have time to go through all of this. I'm just giving you some indications so that when we start looking at leukemia, we can still use those same principles. Now, I have more experience dealing with cancer and terminal disease, such as AIDS, Lou Gehrig's disease, than anything else. I mostly specialize in cancer, though. Brain cancer, I know more about female diseases than I do any single problem. I wanted to be a female doctor before I got to know the spirit of prophecy. My life was I was tossed between two things: to be an artist, which was easy, or to be a doctor, which was hard for me. Can't spell, can't write. I said, I don't see it. Doctor is not in the cards for me. But for some reason, God directed me in that area. But I remember when I first got started, God told me through his Holy Spirit, he said, I want you to take the most difficult cases in the world. And I said, no, I want to be like Thomas Jackson. I want to be like Danny Vieira. I want to just travel around, give beautiful lectures, and oh man, to get up there and talk like those guys, which are very gifted. And I want to be like them. Chris Hudson or somebody like that, you know what I mean? He said, no, I don't want you to do that. He said, I want you to be a doctor and a preacher. I said, okay. I wasn't much of a preacher, sure wasn't a doctor. So I didn't see how I was going to fulfill any of that. But anyway, he told me to take the most difficult cases. By doing that, there would be a field of labor everywhere for me. There would be no competition at all. None. I didn't know this, but that would be my greatest advantage, is to take the most difficult cases in the world. Because back here 40-some years ago, everybody was afraid to do that. They was running to Mexico. They had just ran out Gershon and Hoxie and all of them out of the U.S. And so I'm just getting started. There was no such thing as the medical work as you know it right now. It did not exist. There was a Wildwood. That was it. Pines got started the same time I did. But there was never an aggressive approach at dealing with disease. And so God told me to take brain cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, bone cancer, leukemia. And I began to study up, and I lived up in the mountains, and I stayed up there for 5 years. I never came down from those mountains. I built me a little log cabin out of pine trees and a little bungalow, and I lived up there in nature 5 years. I walked in the woods and I studied the herbs and everything, and after 5 years, God told me, now it's time to go to work. And I took on some of the most difficult cases, especially when I deal with cancer, you'll see it. One of the things that I really thank God for is I read a quote that every medical missionary should know how to do surgery. I said, now, God, I'm in a problem now. I don't know nothing about no surgery. I knew about herbs, but I didn't know about no surgery. And he said that, remember now, I was the first and greatest surgeon. I said, yes, I remember Adam. He said, I know how to extract and how to sew up a wound and all that. He said, let this mind be in you that was in Jesus Christ. And so really, I learned not to depend on my knowledge, but the knowledge of the Holy Spirit. Because when I try to depend on my knowledge, it scared me to death. So God taught me how to be an herbal surgeon. And I am an herbal surgeon. I've done thousands of surgeries. I've taken out tumors bigger than your head. And I did not be in a sterile environment. I don't need no stitches. I don't need no blood transfusion. It's not magic. It's a chemical process by knowing that certain herbs and minerals will break down protein and would extract necrotic protein out of the body. Knowing that, by studying those different minerals and herbs, I can make a salve and I can apply it over the body, and we eat through the mucous membrane, and aid of the white blood cells can pull the tumor out of a person's body. When I did that, it scared me to death. I had never seen anything like that. I remember buying a chicken, a dead chicken. Man, I always tell the people a dead chicken because, if you go brutalize the chicken, they lock you up animal abuse, but you can go to the butcher store and get them all day long. So I got a dead chicken. I cut him open. I put a marble inside of the chicken. Then I made up these salves, and I wanted to see how long would it take for these salves to eat down to that marble and pull it out. And I logged that and wrote it down until finally I figured it out. Now I know how much and where to place it and how long it's going to take to extract that tumor out of the body. And it's something that I don't know. We're going to touch a little on that, but I don't know how much we'll get into that.
How did the marble get out?
Well, actually it didn't. It just ate down to the marble. But in a normal process, your white blood cells will get out a tumor, abnormal growth. Let me answer this question once again. If you get a splinter stuck in your finger and you can't get it out, now it's swollen, got a lot of fluid around it, and you can't touch it, right? And it's too sore, it's inflamed. You know what I'm talking about.
No, I never had.
What's a little stick, splinter?
I had a stick, but it was never inflamed.
Okay, well, it will. If you don't get it out, it'll swell up. It'll swell up and be a fluid around called pus, right? Now, if you don't get it out, it's going to swell, get very painful. One day you're going to go to bed, you're going to wake up and say, let me check that finger out. And all of a sudden it's got fluid, and you say, wow, what happened to that splinter? It's gone. Body pushed it out. What takes place is oh man, is this a regular marker for this board here? Okay. I said I wasn't going to get up, but I'm going to have to do this in here. Okay, let's say we got a splinter stuck right here. We got a splinter stuck right here in that finger there. What's going to take place is what we call phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is nothing but WBC, just white blood cells. These white blood cells recognize that's a foreign invader in the body, and it want to get it out. So what it want to do is to come around it and see how it can get that splinter out of the finger. But in comparison to the little white blood cells, that's like a little ant trying to move a tree.
So it calls more.
Tens of thousands will come from the bone marrow and the rest of the place, coming here to help. Now, what it will do is it recognizes it cannot remove that big tree. What it would do, these white blood cells would dissolve. They would give up their life. They'll give up their life by the tens of thousands. That is pus. That pus then floods that whole splinter around that splinter right there. Now, all it needs to be able to do is to penetrate that mucous membrane, that skin right there. If it can break a hole in that skin, guess what's going to happen to that fluid? It's going to come out. It's going to come out. And that's how now that big tree is sitting in a pool of water now. It's just sitting in the water. Those tens of thousands of white blood cells got leverage now. They can get behind now and push it right out the body. All right? Push it right out. All it needs is to break this membrane right here. Break that skin. This is where the salves come in at. Sometimes the body will eat through and create a sore, and it'll drain the fluid out. But if for some reason they can't do it, you put a salve on there, it burn a hole in the skin. Now that fluid can escape, and it can push out whatever it is that is inside of the body. And that's basically, the salves do not remove the tumor. Your white blood cells do that. But we got to aid and help it to get out. And it's a beautiful process.
The tumor gets out through...
It come right out of the body. It'll be growing right on the surface right there. Once it's stuck on your body, then you cauterize it.
Oh, they just cut.
What you do is it's stuck right there, just like that. You put another salve on it, and that dried up and dry up the blood vessels. It's called what we call angiogenesis. Angiogenesis is a process of the body growing blood vessels, abnormal blood vessels that feed the tumor mass. If we can cut off the angiogenesis process by using anti-angiogenesis system of cauterizing those blood vessels, cutting off the blood supply, you strangulate that tumor. You cut off all the oxygen and nourishment, that tumor dies. In a very simple way, if you take a rubber band and you wrap it on your little puppy's tail, tight as you can, put it on there real tight. 7 to 10 days, what happened to that tail? Fall off. It don't bleed or nothing. It cauterized it. You cut off the blood supply. That's what happened to that tumor. You cut off the blood supply, that tumor gonna die. And I'm hoping I can do a class on angiogenesis. It wasn't on the format, but that would be one that would be interesting to see that now we're heading in an area of natural medicine and allopathic medicine where the surgical process is going to be so obsolete. It is so obsolete. It's ridiculous to cut open a person. And it's not effective at all. But through the process of anti-angiogenesis, we can destroy a tumor mass deep in the body without cutting the person open, and then let the body discharge that tumor without even cutting them open.
It
Medical.
makes sense. A lot of times I thought in my head, I'm like, if God created this, there has to be a way that He also designed the system.
Yeah, the medical system knows this. They have already pursuing that, but they're doing it for filthy lucre. They know that angiogenesis process works. They discovered this when they do surgery. They cut somebody open with surgery. They noticed that there was a rapid regrowth of blood vessels. Because when they cut you open, they don't go through and say, well, I don't need to cut that blood vessel, and I don't need to cut that blood vessel. They don't. They just, they cut right through those blood vessels. Are you following me? Now, once they cut through those blood vessels, they disconnect it. Now, how do they get back connected? They grow back together. Okay? And now, when they grow back together, they can feed nourishment. But with cancer, it produces abnormal blood vessels that feed the tumor. If we can stop that process, we can strangulate and deprive the tumors from nourishment, and they'll die. That's simple as that. So any questions before, I took a little longer in that preliminary, and I won't, but any questions on what I've talked about? Okay, so let's look at chronic myeloid leukemia, also known as chronic myelogenic leukemia. Chronic myeloid leukemia is a form of cancer that affects the bone marrow and the blood. So we're looking at a type of cancer that affects the bone marrow and the blood. Now the life of the flesh is where? It's in the blood. So that means that the quality of life is where? That means that if you want good life, you need what? And the bad life, you got bad blood. So with how many diseases do we have? If you systematically counted all the diseases, could we count them? Give me a count a few of them for me.
Oh, you mean, I just thought that diseases that
Okay. How many diseases do we have? Huh? Many? The life of the flesh is where? In the blood. The quality of life is in the blood. Right? So now, can you name 3 diseases for me?
cold.
Okay. Diabetes, arthritis. Is that a disease? Is that disease? No. Those are symptoms. Those are symptoms of a disease, not a many disease. Those are symptoms of one disease. Because the life of the flesh is where? In the blood. So the only disease we have is blood disease. Arthritis is nothing but inflammation because of a bag of purine and uric acid that is irritating the muscles, the bones, but it's not the disease, it's symptoms. Diabetes is over a surplus amount of glucose or sugar in the bloodstream that is not getting into the cells, And so it produces symptoms such as frequent diabetes and so on, and all type of pain, you name it. But that is not a disease. That's a symptom of what? Bad blood. Okay? Cancer, you got this big cancerous sore. Yes, ma'am. Same thing. Yeah. Autoimmune, gluten intolerance. Is that a disease? No, it's not a disease. It's a symptom. Gluten intolerance because you're taking something your body can't identify with, so your body responds, hey, I don't supposed to be in here. So what is the disease? It's not the gluten, because the gluten had no business being in the body anyway. A lactose intolerance, it has no business being in there. So you put it in there. So what disease is your effort to put something in the body that should not be in the body, because if you didn't put it in there, you wouldn't have the problem. You wouldn't have the symptoms. The symptoms is a reminder that you messed up. That's all it is. What's the purpose of the law? What's the purpose of the 10th commandment? Is it to make us holy and righteous? No. It's to remind us how wicked and how sinful we are. It's a mirror. That's the purpose of the law. It can. Same thing. It's a genetic problem with the beta cells, the insulin-producing cells. But diabetes type 1 or type 2 is not a disease. Those are symptoms. What caused that diabetes in the first place? What produced it? Because that's the cause. The gun, a gun is not a bad thing. It can do no harm. Somebody had to pull the trigger. That's where the problem is. But otherwise, that gun would lay down on that table forever until it dissipates. But the person that pulled the trigger is the one that did the damage. So when we pick up something we don't supposed to eat and put it in the body, it's not what we put in the body. It is us what? Selecting something that should not be in the body in the first place. Because if we didn't put it in there, we wouldn't have a problem.
Now I have another question. What about those things like stress?
Stress?
Yeah.
Well, you know that's a symptom, because what are you supposed to do with stress?
Give it to God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So now if you're not going to give it to God, you're trying to give it to yourself. So that's a symptom of you failing to trust God. All right? So every disease is a manifestation of a symptom with an underlying problem. And you must understand this concept that you're going to find yourself fighting and fighting and fighting it. You got a toothache. Everyone, I don't care how intelligent, how primitive you may be, you get a toothache, you do this. Why do you do that? Why you hold your jaw when you got a toothache? Everybody do that. I don't care what language it is. Go to the most primitive places in the world, they're going to do that. The most educated people, they're going to do that. Why? Didn't nobody have to teach you to do that?
But it eases the pain.
It does. Why? How do it ease the pain? By giving yourself a self-heating compress. Your hand is your compress. The heat that you hold right there warms up the blood vessels, thin out the blood, and gives some ease. Ain't that something? I tell you, God's work is simple. God is looking for simple people that will use simple means by which he can get all the glory. God don't need the fancy apparatus of this world. He needs simple faith in people. And don't need all that intelligence. So, but understanding that language is so important.
How to prevent leukemia. Blood is integral in keeping us alive, as it is responsible for distributing essential nutrients and minerals throughout our body, supplying our cells with oxygen.
Let's pause right there. So blood is essential. And that is to be able to transport nutrients and minerals throughout the body. So the blood system is our highway transportation system. Without our trains and our trucks, it's going to be hard for us to get nourishment into the cities and into our homes. We need that, right? We need this transportation system. And so the blood serves no other purpose other than getting nourishment, taking away waste, bringing oxygen and carbon dioxide gases in and out of the body. And to keep us warm, to keep us cool. That's the purpose and the function of the blood. It has no other purpose at all. So whenever there's a disease, we have to focus on the blood. Fix the blood. And by doing that, we can alleviate most of the problem.
Of infections and healing. In this respect, blood is life. It is produced in the soft tissue inside our bones.
Now notice that blood is life. And it is, because the life of the flesh is in the blood. Even as world as they understand that. And truly, God said, if you want to know something, he said, ask the beast, he shall teach thee. You know what that's talking about? Ask the beast, they shall teach thee.
Oh, bees.
A beast, animal.
Yeah.
What is that talking about? If you want to know something, ask the beast, he shall teach thee.
That's God.
Oh, God is not the beast.
Oh, I know.
But he's saying, if you want to know something, ask the dog. When he's sick, he go picking through the grass and he chew a certain grass. All right? If he's got inflammation in his abdominal area, he'll lay in a mud hole and put his belly in a mud hole, and he refused to eat. He knows something we don't know. The animals are very intelligent when it comes to that. They know. So beast is also talking about people of the world because, they had a mindset of a beast. So if you want to know something, ask the world. They should teach thee. But as the world teach you, you should be able to apply that to good principles. Good principles instead of wrong principles. They have a wrong motive. Now take Nebuchadnezzar. When Nebuchadnezzar had a mental illness, he became schizophrenic when he got to know God through the canvassing of Daniel and the Hebrew boys. And after he came to acknowledge God and Daniel's God as his God, he fell back into the beggar elements of things and began to exalt himself and to pride himself on what he had done and glorified himself other than God. When he did that, what happened to him? God drove him from his palace. He lost his mind. You're right. He lost his mind. And he drove him from his palace, and he lived like a wild beast in the field, thought he was a cow. It looks like one of the most cruelest things you could do to a man of that stature. But let's take a look at it. What was it that caused Nebuchadnezzar to forget God? All that he had, all the riches and the comfort he had. He had no anxiety with money and things. So he had no need to really ground himself in his faith. He depended on himself. And he found himself slipping right back into that same old craziness, depending to himself. So when he went up in his balcony, he looked out and he saw all the greatness of his kingdom. He forgot God and glorified himself. Now, God loved him because he committed himself. Nebuchadnezzar committed himself to serve God, even though he didn't have no strength. But God loved him, though. How did God heal Nebuchadnezzar? How did he heal him? Huh? Okay, so he first thing he did, he took all the worldly care from him. He wasn't worried about that palace no more. That palace and gold and silver, all them fine clothes didn't mean nothing to him no more. Only thing he wanted to do is get out there and get that tender alfalfa grass before the rest of the beasts get it. All right? That was his only concern. So the burden of the kingdom of Babylon was no longer valuable to him. That burden was gone. God will remove your burden if you are full of stress. The things of this life won't mean anything anymore. That gave that man's mind time to relax. And now God put him in a country place. Took the cares of this world from him. Now he's eating grass. I wonder why God gave him grass to eat. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought that maybe I need to eat a little grass? What is it about grass that could have helped Nebuchadnezzar? Okay, come on, speak up to me now.
I think it was because draws nutrients from the soil.
That's right.
So that helped him.
Now look at you. See, you got all that information you're hiding from us. So it's got nutrients in the soil. The grass, the root of the grass pulled in 16 inorganic and organic minerals from the dirt, which Nebuchadnezzar was comprised of. He was made up of those minerals. Now he's putting them, restoring those minerals back in his body. The reason why Nebuchadnezzar had a mental disorder, because his system was depleted. He was malnourished. He didn't get those minerals that was in the soil. Now his body's depleted, so his body began to malfunction. All right? But now you're restoring those minerals back in his body. By restoring them, you're regenerating cells, old dormant cells, sick cells. You're regenerating them again. And through a process of time, he was able to restore the man. So next time somebody offers you a little grass, don't feel insulted. It's a medicine. God gave us those green grasses for the healing of the nation. It has a green substance in it called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is almost identical to the human blood in composition, only like a little iron. So the more greens you eat, the more you're transfusing yourself. And the more you transfuse yourself, you're simply extending your life. That's why God gave man vegetables after the fall, to extend his life during his probationary period. It began in the blood-forming cells of the bone marrow, and then over time spread to the blood. Eventually, the disease spread to other areas of the body. It spread to other areas of the body through a system called metastasis, metastasize. Typically, beginning as chronically indicated that this type of leukemia spread and grows slowly. However, chronic myelogenous leukemia can change from slow progressive into a rapid growing, acute form of leukemia that can spread to almost any organ of the body. Unlike the three other main types of leukemia, it has a significant difference that set it apart from the rest. It has been shown that chronic myelogenous leukemia is associated with abnormal chromosome known as Philadelphia chromosome. In other words, there's something wrong with the chromosome, the Philadelphian chromosome. And genetic problems are difficult to work with because it takes, that word genetic is come from another word meaning generation. And anytime you have a genetic problem, that means it's going to take generations to fix that. Because generation comes from the word genes. Generation would take generations before you can fix that problem. So it's not like you can take a pill, an herb, and it fixes it. No, it's going to take generations in order to do that. Like Down syndrome, cystic fibrosis, it's going to take generations. Graves' disease, lupus, it's going to take generations to fix that. Generation don't mean what you may think. Generation don't mean that I have to die and then I produce a son and he produces a son. I'm not talking that kind of generation. I'm talking the generation of the cells. The cellular generation is 120 days. That's what God gave Moses. Noah. You remember that, right? Because he knew that represented generation of man's life. And the 120 days is the generation of the red blood cell. Did I see a hand somewhere?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. Maybe it's off topic. What about like when they give, we got shots when we were kids? Like, I know I read that that's not really good for us.
Well, it's not. Now, basically what they do is they mix the vaccine by...
Oh, vaccination, not shot yet.
Yeah, they by taking whatever it is they want to vaccinate you with, they take that particular virus, the chicken pox, they take the chicken pox and they expose it to radiation and they kill it, inactivate it. and they make a drug out of it, and they inject that into your blood. Your body recognizes that it's chickenpox, but it's inactive. It's supposed to be. Sometimes it can reactivate. But your body recognizes it and say, hey, that's chickenpox. And then your body will produce an immune response. And it will put in its memory bank, whenever it sees that, it know what to do. It'll say, hey, we dealt with that last time. Let's call up what we used before and stop it. Sometimes it go crazy, it don't work. But that's the whole premise behind vaccination. So it's introducing something in your system that your body can recognize and destroy because it's inactivated. Sometimes it can come back as shingles. That's chickenpox second time around. That means it didn't really work too good. So chromosomes are structures in the cells that contain genes which give instructions to the cells. So chromosomes are structures in the cells that contain genes which give instructions to cells, telling cells what to do and what not to do. So those chromosomes are like a computer been programmed. And so, but sometimes the program can get messed up and it gives the wrong information. The Philadelphia chromosome is an abnormality that occurs when a piece of the chromosome 22 break off and attach to the end of chromosome number 9. So you got two chromosomes. You got chromosome 22, and a piece of the chromosome 22 break off and attach itself. This is chromosome 22. This is chromosome 9. Piece of it breaks off and attaches itself to chromosome number 9, which then attaches itself back to chromosome 22. Now let me see, can I kind of show you what I'm talking about? Right here, you can see the chromosome 22. It breaks off and attaches itself to the chromosome number 9. So now you're commingling these two chromosomes. And these chromosomes have different information, different function. This is going to bring about confusion in the body. Are you following me? And it shouldn't do that. You shouldn't mingle. You remember the Bible said we shouldn't mingle diverse kinds of seeds. And if you do that, it said when you sow your field, don't sow your field with diverse seeds. You wouldn't want to sow your melon seeds with your corn seeds, with your bean seeds. You wouldn't want to do that. Why wouldn't you do that? Wouldn't it be easy to just go out there and just broadcast all your seeds together and get it out the way? You got your melons, you got your corn, you got your peas, you just broadcast it and say, hey, I'm finished, man. In a minute, you finish. And what's going to come up? They're all going to come up. What happened then? The bees will pollinate the nectar, right? Y'all know this. So the bees go to the corn and said, hey, I got a few corn stalks here, but right next to it, I got some melon growing. It will pollinate the melon. And say, hey, I ain't got that much melon. I get a little of that corn. It pollinated a little corn. It's mixing a different pollen from the different plants. Now it takes the pollen back and transporting to different plants. And it cross-contaminating it. And now your corn will taste like melons. You see what I'm talking about? It can change the genetic structure of your corn. That's just like a hybrid plant. You don't want to do that. So when you plant your corn, you plant enough corn, enough rows of corn, enough melons, so that the bees, because the bees don't like doing that. They want to work one nectar at a time because they're very particular about contaminating the hive. So if they're going to work corn this day, they want to work corn. If they're going to work red clover the next day, they'll work red clover. But they don't like switching around like we do, you know. They don't like that because you can contaminate the hive and cause problems. So this is what's happening here. The chromosome 22 mixed with chromosome number 9. And then you go back to chromosome 22. And it can't function. It's confused by that time. The break in both chromosomes cause the BCR and the ABL genes. These are genes which combine to create the cancer genes. So when that takes place, when the 22 chromosome and number 9 chromosome, then it brings it back to the 22 chromosome, Philadelphia 22 chromosome, then the BCR and the ABL, which are genes, combine together, and that produces cancer. And it's because we mingle the seeds. Are you with me with that? So if we had not mingled the seeds, cancer would never have developed. You confuse the body. And we see this. We see this in the physical realm. We see this in the spiritual realm. Today, you know, the 10th commandment said that the 4th commandment is the Sabbath of the Lord. But somebody mingled the seed now saying that the lunar Sabbath is the Sabbath of the Lord. And it confused the body. You see what I mean? Now the body got to go back and try to figure this out. Well, how do the body figure out which day is the right day? You got to go to a source that is greater than you. If you're going to figure it out yourself, you are God. You follow me? What I'm saying? You have consulted yourself, and that's the most dangerous process in the world when a man consults himself. So you have to have trust in a power greater than you to believe that he's right and have all knowledge. But when you don't do that, you're going to seek knowledge, and knowledge is going to confuse you. And that's what's happening. When this confusion come in, you're going to come up with a whole different process. So once again, the 22 chromosome, it attaches itself to the chromosome number 9, and then it brings the BCR, the ABL genes, combine together, and that produces the cancer. So where we want to stop that is we want to stop this commingling. How do you do that? How do you produce this commingling of these seeds that should not mingle? Well, first of all, these genes need nourishment. If they do not get nourishment, they will seek it from some other source. One of the best examples of that is the AIDS virus. The AIDS virus it needs protein, what you call L-phenylalanine. It needs that protein in order to produce an immune response from the T cells. Well, the problem is, if it do not get that particular protein, it will search and search to find anything in the body, whether it's toxic or whatever it is, to convert it to L-phenylalanine. And it will take whatever it is and convert it. So the AIDS virus presents itself as an edible protein that your immune system can use. Your body examined the AIDS virus and said, yeah, it's got some protein in it, but it recognized it's an infectious organism. But in its desperation to have that protein to protect the body, it accepts the AIDS virus in. Now they have become one flesh. The AIDS virus and I wish I could illustrate this here better for you. It would make more sense. Let's see here. Okay, so let's take just take the AIDS virus right there. Okay, so now this is, let's say this here, that's the white blood cell right there. It recognized that AIDS virus right there is a virus, but it's desperate. It wants that protein. Without that protein, it cannot protect the body. It can't do it. So what it will do, it will send out what we call a chemical signal called chemotaxis. And it's a sonar. It'll send it out and examine that and say, is it enough protein in there that I can convert that to L-phenylalanine? And it's yes, it is. But it's toxic also. So he said, well, I'll go ahead on and take it. Once it take it in, now you have, that's the T cell, and that's your AIDS virus. They become one flush. Okay? They become one flush. So now the rest of the T cells out here, they recognize that this T cell here is their brother. They see kinship there. So they said, but they see he done attached himself to this virus. They become one flesh. God always warned his people about that by co-marrying and co-mingling with heathens. You remember Jacob's daughter, Dinah? You remember when she went and visited the children and young folks of the world? Caused that people to lose their lives, all of them. Because she what? Co-mingled. And God said, we are not to be reckoned among the nations. God's people were never to be reckoned among the nations. But by co-mingling, the nation incorporated their ideals and philosophy with God's people. Now, God's people are more worldly than they is of the character of God. We see that commingling today in the church. Okay, so now they recognize that's their brother. They have already been programmed never to attack themselves. God put that in them, never to attack their brother. But their job is to protect the body. They see this AIDS virus as a threat, but they inhibit from attacking because they would destroy their brother. Are you following me with that? I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. This AIDS virus do not care nothing about this T cell. It's only using it. Eventually, this AIDS virus is going to turn on this T cell and destroy it. That's what the world's going to do to us if we don't watch it. So when that takes place, that AIDS virus up here, this AIDS virus right here is going to eventually explode into little pieces. It's going to explode into little pieces. Each one of them got the AIDS virus in them. They're held in check. They can't do anything. They can't do nothing because the law of the body said don't attack your brother. But that law do not apply to the AIDS virus because he's not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. He's at enmity with the law of God. So he's not subject to it. But the law of God is subject to his brother and said, thou shalt not what? Kill thy brother. So, but here, he said, I cannot about no law of God. So he explode into little pieces, tens of thousands of little particles now floating in the bloodstream. Guess what it want to do? It want to do the same thing. It want to attach itself to these T cells. Every time it attaches itself to a C cell, the T cells go down. You drop in the T count. And as your T count drops, your immune system drops. It drops from 1,200 to 600 to 300 to 50. Now you have no immune response. Now your body has no protection. You're open for every infection under the sun. So that's because the body has been invaded. And it was confusion. What brought that about? What brought it about? It needed protein. You wasn't giving it the right protein. And you know the reason why it needed protein? Because protein is the building block of the body. The first thing your body must do is to rebuild the cellular wall. First thing, you have to rebuild a cellular wall. If it cannot build that, then you got problems. So, according to the American Cancer Society, there is approximately 5,000 different leukemia incidents in the United States back in 2009. And it accounts to about 10 to 15% of all types of leukemia, with an average age at diagnosis of about 67 years old. Chronic myeloid leukemia treatment options. We're going to look at some of those options. Include, from a medical perspective, radiation, chemotherapy, stem cell transplant, and immunotherapy. with a radiation therapy, by shooting a beam into the body, they're hoping that they can break up and destroy some of the cancer cells. Chemo is a cytotoxic drug, supposed to infiltrate the bloodstream and there reduce the amount of cancer cells in the blood and in the body. Chemotherapy cannot discriminate, so it attacks both good and bad. But the premise is that your good cells will repopulate and restore itself. The problem is that chemotherapy can be so devastating to the body that your body do not have the stamina or the strength to repopulate because of malnourishment, weakness, and eventually the body's too weak to recover from it. Stem cells, the whole concept of stem cells is that all our cellular system come from the bone marrow and our spleen and from one cell, but that one cell is regenerated into many different cells. And so by simply putting stem cells in the body, and a good example, I back up, before they do a stem cell implant, they would go in, take a piece of your bone marrow and save it. And then they would hit you with a heavy blast of chemo and burn out all your stem cells. And now, once they put it back in to regrow, repopulate it. That's how they hope for that to work. Many times that do not work. Now let's look at, see how do we work with lymphoblastic myogenic leukemia. First thing is calorie restriction. I'm going to explain calorie restriction now. That means it must be a diet restriction, which entails reducing the calorie intake while maintaining optimal nutrition in the diet. So we must reduce those calories. That's simply talking about the high calorie foods. That don't mean you reduce the nutrition. What are some of your high calorie foods? Your oily foods, your sugary foods, your processed foods. Those are your high calorie foods. Your low calorie foods would be your complex carbohydrates. Your high calorie foods would be your simple carbohydrates. So that means your refined grains, processed meal and wheat and grains like that. That means that our denatured, devitamized foods going to be very high calories. We got to reduce that. But in reducing our calories, we must maintain proper nutrition. One big problem when you work with seriously ill people is we're going to starve the cancer cell to death. Who do you end up starving to death first? The person. The person's so malnourished, nothing but a bag of bones, and you said, we're just going to juice you, we're going to juice you, we're going to kill that cancer, and the person ended up dying. You said, well, cancer killed that person. Cancer didn't kill that person. That person died of malnourishment. All cancer patients are suffering from malnourishment. They need good nourishment. And so the weaker they become, the more malnourished, the less they're going to have strength to produce immune response. And so the plan is to decrease cancer development and we do this through many different type of mechanisms, but one particular is diet, but knowing the right type of diet. They did many experiments with mice and rats, and they found that reducing their calories to 75% of the normal intake, combined with a target therapy, decreased the number of circulating lymphoma cells. In other words, they found, yes, sis?
I'm sorry, I wanted to ask you, as you mentioned about about bad nourishment, do you think that also there are some theories like that cancer is growing when you give it sugar and when you give it saccharides, like the carbohydrates? Do you think it's true?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what it's talking about here. A diet restriction means if you don't have any diet restriction, now you got diet restriction. I mean, no Coca-Cola, no candy bars, no donuts, you know what I mean, French fries, those are diet restriction. So if you do not have diet restriction, you just binge out on everything. when you do that, you increase your chances of getting seriously ill. So it's not reducing the amount of complex carbohydrates in the form of fruits, grains, nuts, and vegetables, whole grain, and so on. It's not reducing that. But these high-calorie foods is what you're reducing. So yes, that's true. But reducing it by 75%, in other words, about 25%, you can do a little of some of that. Now, let's take a person, you put a person that's severely malnourished, you reduce their calorie intake by 75%, about 100 pounds. What will the 25% include in their high-calorie diet? And why would you want to maintain that 25%? Why not just do 100% reduction in high-calorie foods? What would happen to that person? You're going to starve them to death. They're already 100 pounds. Do you think they're going to gain some weight on live juices and raw salads? They're going to gain any weight with that? What they going to do? They're going to lose more weight. How can you maintain an optimal weight by reducing the high-calorie foods? You're going to have to find the whole grain, whole cereals. You're going to have to put a little oil in it, extra virgin olive oil, flaxseed oil, grapeseed oil. You're going to put a little in there because oils is your highest calorie foods. Now you say, well, but I don't know if we want an oil-free diet. I agree. We need a reduced amount of free fats and oils in the diet. But when a person is severely malnourished, they're going to have it, that they're going to just disappear. I hope y'all understand that. This is a mistake most people make when they work with cancer patients. They're so fixed on starving the cancer that they end up starving the person. God said the leaves of the tree was for the healing of the nation. So, once again, if we reduce the calorie diet 25 to 35% versus reducing the diet 75 to 85%, each one of those little yellow spots represent calories that is producing leukemia cells. So if you reduce it down to 25 to 35%, you got a lot of possibilities for leukemia to develop. But if you reduce it down to 75 to 85%, you see you lessen the possibilities for it to develop. But at the same token, you're not sacrificing nutrition, you're simply eliminating the bad foods and putting in good whole grain, whole cereals, seeds, nuts, and a little oil. That oil inclusive in your 25%. But the 75 to 80% is inclusive in your whole grains, fruits, vegetables, complex carbohydrates. Now, if I'm talking too fast, y'all stop me. This is a class, and we're out here to learn, not to exercise just in me running my mouth. The investigators speculated that the combination of calorie restriction and target therapy may have potential to increase the survival of the person. Now, I study medical research papers. I've spent a lot of time studying medical research. Most people study herb books, nutrition books. I do too. But I spend probably more time studying the beast. Because God said, if you want to know something, ask the beast. I'm asking the medical system to teach me how to treat disease. Do you know if a person tell me, they said, Brother Wilson, I'm on prednisone. I said, okay, I like to get off prednisone. But then I have to study prednisones to see how they made it, what effect it has, and why it seemed to help a person besides its adverse side effects. So I have to study the medical research on prednisone. Why? What is the reason I'm doing that? I'm studying prednisone so I can make a copy through alternative medicine. If they can make it through synthetic drugs, I should be able to make that through herbs, vitamin, and nutrition. And it should serve the same purpose, a better purpose. So if I want to make an aspirin, How can I make an aspirin without studying the aspirin? I must study it first. See how they made it, what is the purpose of it, and see can I make a better copy of it. And that's what I do. So, and by using target therapy, means chemo, radiation, surgery. Well, what would be my alternative to chemo? I need to make my own chemo. Because I'm concerned about the chemo they use because it's cytotoxic. Well, what do chemo supposed to do? Chemo is supposed to kill cancer cells. Well, what have God given us to kill cancer cells? Our white blood cells. Well, what is the reason my white blood cells cannot kill cancer cells? Malnourishment. What if I can give the body a tonic that will supply my white blood cells with what they need so that they can kill cancer cells? Then I have just made my own herbal chemo. And it's a better one with no adverse side effects. Calorie restrictions lower the incidence and delay the onset of lymphoma, thus yielding a lower lymphoma mortality and extending the lifespan. So once again, that diet is really important. And don't ever downplay that. And here they did an experiment in a mice study. For 4 months was given a diet fasting significantly by reducing the incidence of lymphoma. They put these mice on this diet restriction for 4 months. And they went back to check the lymphoma, and it had 0 comparison to 33 in the control. What that's telling me that those mice, all those mice recovered from lymphoma. But the control had 33%. That means they didn't have the diet restriction that these other mice had. Well, that kind of gives me an idea that I can do that with humans. Let me put them on a diet restriction with target therapy. Instead of me using chemo, I use herbal chemo. Instead of me using radiation, I would get them herbal ray. Instead of me using surgery, I use herbal surgery. And so I'm substituting the bad with something good. And I know you don't know what I'm talking about with herbal ray. I make my own radiation. It's not radiation. I make my own herbal ray machine where I take infrared lights, 250 watt infrared lights. I take sometimes 4 to 8 of them, and I put them in a box. And I shine that into a person's body. Then I take DMSO, and olive oil and herbs, a liquid herb solution, and I put that on the body. And I cut the lights off in a dark room, and I shoot these lights straight through a person's body. And I can produce a better effect than radiation without the toxic effect. Now, if you want to turn that into a radiation machine, I need magnetic magnets. By using magnetic magnets with what I just made, I make my own radiation machine. Then it would be toxic. But by eliminating the magnetic magnets, I will not produce no toxic radium. That's the only difference. And you're talking about fantastic. I mean, if you give somebody an herbal ray treatment, it's one of the best treatments in the world. Have you ever been in the beach and you laid out in the sun, just laying out there and all that hydrogen air all around you, and the sunlight is coming down through the midst of that water evaporating off the ocean? You feel really good. Or take a nice salt bath, feel really good. Well, that's what that herbal ray does. That herbal ray is so beautiful. It just relaxes your whole system. And it's simple. I can build an herbal ray machine for less than $100. And it's very nice. Let's look at it. We're still looking at some target therapy. Selenium. Selenium is an essential trace element and a cofactor. Selenium-dependent enzymes such as glutathione is a detoxifying enzyme. So we need selenium. The problem with selenium is most of our food is depleted in it because the soil is depleted. And it's because we're not rotating our crops, we're not letting our crops rest. The selenium is very low, and that's why we are suffering a lot of problems. It has an established role in cancer prevention. And recent evidence also support its role in lymphoma treatment. So you want to incorporate selenium in your program. Selenium prevents lymphoma cells from proliferation, causing lymphoma cells death, selectively sensitizing lymphoma cells to anti-tumor effect of herbal chemo. I'll go back and explain that. Selenium can prevent lymphoma from proliferating. Proliferation is where cells go through mitosis. They're divided and subdivided. Selenium stopped them from this rapid cell division, which can cause lymphoma cells to die. If lymphoma cells cannot go through this rapid proliferation, they're going to die. It also makes it sensitive to anti-tumor effect of your herbal chemo. So your herbal chemo, and we'll talk a little about herbal chemo. Herbal chemo would be a selection of about 12 to 16 different herbs. And in order for those herbs to be able to do what it's supposed to do, it's got to affect those lymphoma cells. So selenium helps those herbs to they destroy those cancer cells. So they work together. Studies indicate that selenium deficiency is implicated in lymphoma development. And we're seeing more and more of that because, once again, our food is depleted. In a study of 20 patients with Hodgkin's lymphoma, selenium level of zinc and zinc level, glutathione, were found to be significantly lower compared to healthy control. So when they went back and they began to look at this lymphoma, they found that most of the people had low level of zinc and selenium. And by simply replacing it, giving them more of that, they were able to see an improvement. In addition, selenium level at diagnosis were predicted of an outcome of lymphoma patient. In other words, they had reached through their trial that if they can reduce the amount of selenium in animals control, they could predict that animal would get lymphoma. And by doing that with the animals, now they know they can do that with humans. In this study, 430 patients, 156 with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and 111 with follicular lymphoma, and 163 with acute myeloid leukemia. Selenium level measured at a diagnosis were found to be lower than the normal at about 45% of the subjects. So after evaluating all of them, they said, well, they have a very low level of selenium. And Hodgkin's lymphoma and acute myeloid leukemia patients with low selenium had poor response to anti-cancer treatment. Now what that's talking about is these patients that they observed responded very poor to the treatment protocol because their selenium level was too low. But they found that when they got the selenium level at an optimal level, they showed really good improvement. Furthermore, low selenium level was linked to poor survival in follicular lymphoma patients. And so, with that selenium low, they didn't do as well. So the last time you worked with a leukemia patient, a lymphoma, if you was not checking their selenium level, you may have been giving them the right herbs, the right treatment, the right diet, but the diet was depleted in selenium. They didn't do so well. But now, by simply making sure they get the proper balance of selenium, along with all the good things you were doing, you can make a difference in that person. Any questions on that? Yes.
Which form of selenium should it be? Should it be food?
It can be in the food if the food have it. You're going to have to supplement because our food is just not grown for nutrition. It's grown for profit. So, and then even if you got an organic garden, you don't know if that has a proper balance of minerals in it. You really don't. So it's going to take years of preparing that soil to get it. A lot come into play when you're dealing with the soil. So I would supplement, but at the same token, I try to build my soil up. But keep in mind, it's going to take years to get that soil right where it's supposed to be. Next one is green tea. Green tea contains phytonutrients which has been shown to possess anti-cancer properties. Animal studies found that green tea significantly inhibit lymphoma, Hodgkin's tumor growth. It can inhibit that. It can stop that. Green tea. After the publication of experimental research on green tea, lymphoma physicians at the Mayo Clinic discovered 4 patients with low-grade lymphoma began consuming over-the-counter green tea products on their own initiative. So they found that some of the patients they had in their control was going out buying green tea and was taking it themselves. 3 of the 4 patients with low-grade B-cell lymphoma who used green tea eventually fulfilled the criteria for partial response. So they did real well. They did real well by just drinking the green tea. So the Mayo Clinic doctor stated that several patients presented here had documented steady clinical, laboratory, and radiographic evidence of progression. And so they just got better and better and better by just drinking that green tea. So that would be one of the things that I would definitely incorporate into my program. I think what we're going to do, we're going to take a break and let you have a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll continue to go with our study. So let's take a break for about 10 minutes.